Hello and welcome back to the third rail. I have a few wagons in front of me which I intend to use in an upcoming video. They are O10 type open wagons of the Deutsche Reichsbahn. It's Märklin model number 4696 from the early 1980s. What else? I think they would look a bit sad travelling around the layout empty, so I have decided to try and make some coal loads for them. I looked in the collection for inspiration in terms of shape and colour. So we have an entry-level model, the 4431. It is fitted with a simple moulded plastic insert. On the other end of the scale we have this 020 wagon from the 46026 set. I think it dates from the 2000s. Here we have real coal, ground to scale I believe, and the wagon is also weathered. This obviously looks much nicer and is the look to aim for really. Now if we compare the O10 with the O20, the O10 is smaller. The capacity of the O20 was 20 ton I believe, and for the O10 I think it was only 15 ton. Now, I won't weather the car, but I think a real coal load would be very nice. So to do that, I looked around the place and I found a few things I could use. First, we have these pieces of polystyrene. It's not the nicest material to work with, but that should do the trick. It's only an experiment. Then I have a few things left from building a layout for Junior 10 years ago. First a foam hot wire cutter and a bag of ballast. It is coarse cinders from Woodland Cynics, still with its original price tag. I'm sure you'd pay a bit more for this now. I believe you could buy mined coal in that form. But that one is quite fine and I think it should do the trick. Okay, the first thing we need is to cut down the styrene to size so it fits in the wagon. So I'm going to start by measuring this wagon. So we have 29.3 millimeter in width and 73.6 millimeters in length. I take note of that. Now I need to set up the foam cutter. It's a simple device. If you're not familiar with this, it's basically a piece of wire connected to two rods. When current flows across the wire, it becomes hot and slices through foam like butter. So I'm going to adjust the position of the wire. I'm going to narrow the sizes a bit so the insert can fit in the wagon easily. So I'm going to set the wire so it is at 27.5 millimeters from the end of each rod. And once that's done, I can hold my foam cutter upright against the surface. I'll switch it on and I'll push the block through. And I'll get a long strip. Let's check if this fits. It does. Cool, I'll make another one just in case I do something silly with the first one. And this one fits too. Excellent. Now we need to cut one of these strips to length. So it's the same process. I'll adjust the height of the wire first. Then I'll slice the block. Then I'll check the fit. And if, like me, you can't measure properly from time to time, then you can always shave off any excess. It doesn't need to be super precise. There we are. Now I need to start shaping the block. And first I'm going to remove some excess material with the wire cutter again. I am aiming to give the top of the block some form of like elongated pyramidal shape. So I'll use something to prop up one side of the wire cutter so I can slice at an angle. Then I'll just slice the little block I just made on each side. And I'll finish that part by removing some of the material from the center of the block so that I'm left with sort of two pyramids on each side. There we are. Now I can carry on with the shaping of the block, but this time I'll use my Dremel. Now that's where the material chosen is important. The material I have here is rubbish to work with because it easily disintegrates when cut and it generates quite a lot of debris. You get all sorts of white bits going all over the place. If I had to do this again, I'd go for a denser type of foam, like I think insulating board, or maybe some stuff from Woodland Cynics that they sell in blocks. It's probably going to be a bit better to handle. Anyway, that's what I have, so that's what I'll use. So what I'm going to do now is to progressively remove material from the little pyramids I just made, so they become humps. So I'll start at the base of each side and I'll try and carve a curved shape at the bottom of each side of the pyramids. And once I've done that, I'll work my way up from all sides, slowly rounding things a bit and removing more and more material as I go along. So I won't show it to you because of the mess it makes, but after some careful sanding with the Dremel, you should get to a shape like this one I made earlier. Now the first thing I need to do with that block in this shape is to paint it. I'm going to use some black paint I've got left from the Layout building 10 years ago. It's still liquid, so it should work. Why am I doing that? It's to prevent the white color of the polystyrene to shine through gaps in the ballast, if any, later on. So I just applied the paint uniformly everywhere with a brush and I let it dry. And this is the result you'll get. Again, it's something I made earlier. Now I'm ready for the next step, which is to apply a thin layer of PVA glue to the surface. I think you call this Weißleim in German, wood glue, colle blanche. So this type of typical woodworking or multi-purpose craft glue. We don't need too much of it, just enough for the ballast grains to stick and then whatever falls on them to accumulate on top. So I'll only apply glue to the part of the block that will be visible when installed and where I want ballast to stick, of course. Once that's done, I can move the block over a little container and I can sprinkle the ballast over the block with a spoon. I didn't press record at the right time on my camera, but what happens is that the first bits of ballast will stick to the glue on the surface and whatever lands on top of it will accumulate. And then we need to try and cover any white glue spot we see going through the ballast as best as possible with a bit more ballast. And there we go. Now, only part of the ballast is actually stuck to the surface at that stage. I need to fix all of it to the block. I am going to use the same method used when ballasting track. I have this pot here with a solution which is a mix of 50% PVA glue, so the same glue we've applied to the block already, 50% water, with the addition of a drop of washing up liquid. That's the traditional recipe for the ballast glue you get everywhere. You need to mix this well, and I think it's better to make this the day before and leave it overnight so everything is mixed nicely. Now, with a syringe, or you could use a dropper, I prefer the syringe, it's a higher capacity, I'm going to fill it up, of course, and then flood the ballast with this solution. So I'll start at the top and progressively move one drop at a time. See, the solution immediately seeps into the ballast, and the excess will simply find its way out and drop in the container. I'll just proceed one drop at a time until the entire surface of the block is covered. And I now have something that resembles more a candy bar than a coal load. Now this needs to be left alone for 24 hours. And when I say left alone, that means no touching and no moving. After that time, the load can be moved, but it might still be a bit damp. So I'll leave the block to dry for another 48 hours. The solution will become transparent as it dries, and you'll end up with something like that I made earlier. See, it's all dark, no trace of glue. You might need to tidy up the sides a bit if bits of ballast have fallen off over the edge and stuck to the side. This is what I had to do here. But apart from that, I should be able to fit it in a wagon. So let's try that. There we go, the void is filled. Now let's compare it with the 020 from earlier. Well, it's not as fine as far as the coal is concerned, but the color is close, I say. It's not that bad, and I quite like the look. Someone is going to say that the humps are not the same height, but actually, if we look at real coal trains, my result might be more realistic than expected. Here's an example from the 30s. Another one, I think, from the 40s. This one's from the 60s. And another one from the 70s. So, I think we've established that there is no such thing as a perfect coal hump. I think my uneven humps will look very nice. So, I have made a few more loads for the remaining wagons, as you can see now. Once dry, each block is quite stiff and it can be dropped from a certain height without the risk of spraying coal bits all over the place. Now, there is a risk, the way I've done the loads, that some of them might be too tall. I think I have this on this one I'm showing you now. That's going to be easily fixed with the foam cutter. It's just a matter of adjusting the wire as low as it goes, so the closest to the end of the rods. Then I can set the foam cutter upright and I can simply shave off a bit of the base of the block, one slice at a time, until I have the desired height. There we go. You know as much or as little as I do now. I'm sure there are other ways and probably better ways to do this, but I think the result is more than acceptable as far as I'm concerned. Not bad for a first try. I'm already looking forward to your comments though. We will see everything on the move, whatever happens, in a future video. That was it for today. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hopefully enough for you to give it a like and maybe even subscribe if you haven't done it already. Thanks very much for your support and bye for now.